4, 3, 2, 1.
Welcome to another episode of the Ready Set Pwn podcast, your premier source for everything to do with the Vancouver Titans. I am Chris at Lightforce, joined virtually by Sam at another Sam Chan, as well as Omni at Omni Strife. Welcome, gentlemen, to an episode where we are going to share some big news. But before we get into that big news, how have the two of you been?
I was very close to getting the color back on, but not close enough. Other than that, everything's going pretty well.
Yeah, you know, that's the only thing I was thinking of Friday morning was the possibility that we would get to see you in color once again.
Not this week. Not this week.
No. And how are you, West Coast, Best Coast?
I'm just here so I won't get fined.
I like how you got your hat down, you're rocking the hoodie, like, just rolling in the
It's not our best hour.
Oh, are you sad?
Not our worst either.
Let's not go down that alley.
Well, for those of you watching our stream, as we have been coming to you live each and every week over the past, I want to say this is about a month long. This is going to continue for those of you tuning into the podcast as you normally do on Wednesdays at high noon when this podcast goes live. We are going to shake things up. Like, I want to tell everyone what the big news happens to be. I truly do. But then once the news is out of the bag, like, what do we do next?
It's not fun anymore.
Everybody tunes off.
I mean, there's been so many people asking, like, okay, man, dude, what's going on? Like, did you lose a bet? What does this mean? And I keep telling people, you know, Wednesday, which I just want to point out for anyone who actually subscribes to us on Twitch, you get access to our Wednesday emote because all the greatest news breaks on Wednesdays after our podcast goes live. But this news is breaking Tuesday, unless you're tuning into the podcast after the fact and you didn't watch the live stream. Yeah. I also teased that we had a special guest joining us for this particular episode. Now, live stream, you won't see the special guest, unfortunately. Just because of logistical reasons, we have elected to have our special guest join us in the regular podcast. So when this goes live, for those tuning in, you'll actually be able to listen to him. And I'm going to let the cat out of the bag. Our special guest is the co-founder and chief strategy officer of Overactive Media, which, for those that don't know, is the parent of the Toronto Defiant, also the Mad Lions, and the Call of Duty franchise, among other things. Adam Adamo, he joined us and he spoke to us for just under an hour, providing us some fabulous context to the Overwatch League, some fabulous context on the operation of the Toronto Defiant. We talked about merch, we talked about poutine, we talked about so many things. And yes, Katrina, who is here in chat, you did guess right. And the difficulty was I didn't want to simply say, oh, you got it, because you were the first guess. But see, you follow this podcast so well, you knew exactly what we were looking to get into. So again, for those of you tuning into the stream, you'll have to listen to our podcast, which goes live tomorrow, to hear everything that Adam has to say. But we are going to talk a little bit about some of that in this live stream.
You want to know the worst part of all of this? Other than us feeling super dirty, is Adam was probably the best interview we've ever done, hands down. And we've done a lot. And that's with all due respect to all the guests that have come before us. But Adam let it all out.
And that's without even mentioning the other like half an hour we had off the record.
Oh, here's Alex dropping the juice. But no, I mean, I second what Sam provided. Again, you need to tune into our podcast to hear what Adam had to say, because it was phenomenal. But This is a live stream where we want to talk a little bit about the Vancouver Titans, as we are. We talk about being the premier source for the Vancouver Titans. So we're going to talk a little bit about the matchup that they had against the Toronto Defiant just this past weekend. The prelim, or the sort of play-in to the May Mayhem tournament. We're also going to get into the fray as we normally do. We'll talk about the results of the tournament, some changes that have happened within the Overwatch League itself. We've got some Overwatch news, some Blizzard news, and you know what? There's probably a lot of other things we'll just get into over the course of this episode. And as I've said, the interview, which again, if you were tuning into the live stream, I'm sorry. Can't provide it to you here, but make sure you download the podcast as you would normally do. It goes live Wednesday at high noon. So, you know what? Let's get ourselves into the payload.
Moving the payload. Join me.
So, before we talk about the actual match between the Vancouver Titans and the Toronto Defiant on Friday morning, again, this kicked off early on Friday, 10 a.m., the Vancouver Titans announced the addition of their 7th player. That is correct. The Vancouver Titans not only announced a new addition to the roster, but that new addition started and played in the match itself. That is correct. The Vancouver Titans, if you haven't already heard, signed a player by the name of Shockwave. Shockwave is actually formerly of the Montreal Rebellion. He, too, played on ping, similar to what we had seen in previous weeks from Suna, but as well as what we've seen from KSA. And when I saw the announcement, I kind of had sort of my own internal question marks, because his hero pool is very similar to that of Dalton and Suna. And I think for anyone who follows the Vancouver Titans, follows Ready Set Pwn, you knew that that wasn't necessarily the area that we had thought they needed to address. But regardless, Player 7 was announced, and guess what? Vancouver Titans put him into the starting lineup. Now, not to be outdone, the Toronto Defiant also brought in a player of their own. We'll talk more about that in the fray. But you had two teams kicking off the Battle of Canada in what was arguably supposed to be a David versus Goliath matchup. I mean, we here at Team RSP did not have too much confidence in the Vancouver Titans going into this fight, but boy, were we surprised. So let's talk a little bit about the match itself. So the Vancouver Titans, Toronto Defiant, kick things off with the Vancouver Titans looking much like they have in the past. The first 4 matches that we saw them play always started off in a difficult fashion.
Right.
There didn't seem to be much coordination. You had Shredlock going in aggressively. You had main support, both support, quite frankly, unable to keep him up. He would be an early pick, and then things would cascade from there. And beyond the fact that the Toronto Defiant looked like they were just going to coast from that point on, I'm not entirely sure what much more we can add about that first control map.
Especially the fact that our team went with the Echo pick. Mm-hmm. And at least in that first map, we went against that Reaper May, very bulky, really hard to dive on. And once you get the control first, it's really hard to contest. And it felt like a bad start, to be honest. It didn't really feel close. Luckily, though, the tides did turn as we went ahead to the other maps.
Well, and that's the thing. Like, we saw Shockwave come in on Echo on Li Jiang, and he didn't seem to be contributing a whole lot in that moment.
He was present.
Yeah, but that was essentially showing up for class.
All our players, yeah.
And quite frankly, the Toronto Defiant handed the Vancouver Titans the loss that we expected on the first map. So going into the second map, now with the way the Mayhem turn worked, there were no hero pools. The loser picked the map. So the Vancouver Titans had the ability to now pick a map that they felt would better suit their strengths. And in doing so, suddenly looked like a team that had, 1, been playing for quite some time, and 2, and I don't mean this facetiously, knew how to play. Like, it was night and day between what we saw in that control matchup to then what we saw subsequently next. The Vancouver Titans looked by far to be the superior team in that
Right.
matchup. We saw Shockwave decide to go, and simply consume Defiant as if he was, going through the buffet line in Toronto. Like,
He was
go
he
ahead.
was he was putting out so much damage. He got to the ult very, very quickly, and I liked what he did with the ults. Really, he went mostly for the tanks, so there was a good Winston Echo action there. But what came really made us look better than Defiant in this map is the fact that Orisa and Sigma, when Shredlock plays that role and KSA is playing on that Sigma, they looked much better than their Torontonian counterparts,
Yeah.
and they definitely look like a good team. Usually, we were punished for our over aggressive, attack, but suddenly it looked better. It looked better, and Dalton felt like he had more room to maneuver with an additional DPS that puts out so much firepower.
Mm-hmm.
And we were definitely looking not just like a competitive team, but the better team out of the two that were playing.
Yeah, like what does an aggressive Orisa look like anyway?
Well,
It's just BMing with her voice lines.
Yeah. We were sort of joking in RSP Cord that maybe Orisa was the hero that Shredlock was born to play. And the funny thing is like, let's look at what Orisa did to Bumper. I mean, Bumper and Shredlock were W key main tanks. Bumper on Orisa was like, oh my goodness, the end of days. Shredlock on Orisa was like, my man, you are unreal. It's just amazing how one hero can swing two different sides of the spectrum when it comes to how a player is able to adapt and play around that particular character. But I mean, Hollywood itself looked like Hollywood North of old. Right. At no point in time did it appear to me that the Vancouver Titans themselves were going to lose. Now, granted, the Defiant were able to go and almost slow down, I guess the best way to describe it, the snowball that took effect on the Titans' attack. But on the defense, the Titans were in control.
Mm-hmm.
Like at worst, we're like, you know what? We're going to have some solid time. Yeah. And then suddenly it's like, winnable, winnable, winnable. My goodness, they won.
Yeah, and then the composure wasn't lost despite like losing a fight here and there, something that really was an occurrence in the previous matches. Yeah, Hollywood seems to be like their favorite map. I think that's the one they won against Washington as well.
It was, yes.
We lost the 3-1, yeah.
So, now, we had talked about this on the episode. We had said that if the Vancouver Titans are able to get a convincing win, it is possible that might help not only motivate them, show, anything's possible, but possibly distract the Defiant from really what they had found success in that first map. So we go into the Temple of Anubis. Defiant picked this map. And again, the Vancouver Titans look solid. Like at first, it occurred to me that it was going to be one of those sort of long back and forth fights, nonstop. And then suddenly the Titans simply slammed the door shut.
Mm-hmm. Witnessed by 55,000 viewers on YouTube for this match.
Yeah. And again, we saw Shockwave simply have his way with the Defiant. We saw Dalton being freed up to do some crazy things. Shredlock, looked, again, very solid in his role on main tank. And one of the things that I think that also allowed for was the Vancouver Titans support line to then actually be able to be present in sort of, that bunker. And that allowed them to keep their team, alive, for lack of a better description.
I'd also want to say, before we move on from this map, that in this map in particular, Toronto looked really discombobulated, not really communicating. There was those 6-man nade by Kareev that people pointed out, and nobody did anything. So it was really strange.
6-man nade, that was like a called shot. Like he skyballed that.
Right.
And absolutely no follow-up.
They were very hesitant.
Yeah, whether there was a lack of communication or maybe he had muted himself and didn't know.
Maybe his teammates were Googling who Zik is.
Maybe, we don't know. But yeah, it was really weird. But here you have the Vancouver Titans now up 2-1. And it's, quite apparent that the Defiant are like, holy smokes. So they pick Rialto. And Rialto's been a tough map for this version of the Vancouver Titans. Yet, on that defend, I mean, we saw a moment where Shockwave was able to go, and I think he got a 4K before he ended up
He went
dropping.
nuts.
But he was going unbelievably ham. The problem, the Vancouver Titans attack on Rialto, not as effective. I don't know what it is about that map, but the Titans struggle because they get the payload across the bridge around the first corner, and it's that choke that they have yet to figure out how to effectively get through without investing a significant amount of time, a significant amount of alt economy, and subsequently putting themselves behind the 8-ball, moving forward. Again, Shockwave, he was by far the best player. I mean, he was doing some unreal things. At one point, he even flanked on the defend to go as an Orisa to try to get them in a crossfire. Again, playing as Echo and getting to then play whatever character he wants. Yeah. And yet, Titans, unfortunately, couldn't slow down that Toronto Defiant attack. And at this point, we also saw Kariv start to maybe flex a little.
Mm-hmm.
So that takes us into Nepal. Vancouver Titans, having lost this one, got to choose it. And we saw some interesting things on Nepal. And I don't know, is this a control map thing? Is this the Vancouver Titans kryptonite? Rialto and control?
Yeah, there were a few mistakes there that might have been avoidable, but like we said before, a lot of communications. Maybe it's due to ping. We lose Shredlock a lot in those maps when there's no particular path to follow. It happens. Maybe it's a weakness in the support line. Maybe it's a weakness in our tank line. But we definitely don't look as solid or as sustainable as we do in the other maps.
I think a big part of our success in the 2 maps we won was a lot of Shockwave flanking, and in control, it's just you're guarding a circle, right? So it's
right.
Flanking isn't as much prevalent, and they really kind of lived and died by that. I know the cams were on Shockwave a lot, but I think what we can't tangibly see is when the focus is on everybody trying to avoid Shockwave, and until at some points during one of the maps, Zik finally said, "I've had enough of this 1v1," and they had some success, right? But the key part was actually Shockwave was the distraction to the rest of the team actually, first of all, staying alive, which I think is the key point to any map they won is Shredlock stayed alive, right? I can't emphasize how key that is. When he dies, game's over. And whether you want to put that on Shred, you want to put that on the support line, I think both sides a little bit, and we've talked about this before. But I think that's when I think Omni in some chat you were saying hey, we have a really good DPS line, and I think that's what it allows everybody to do is have that space to survive. and we didn't do a lot of that in Nepal, to be quite frank.
And we already talked about Shredlock, so I just want to bring mention to his bumper-esque stall on the Diva, on the baby Diva, and he just smashed into her, but she still lived. It brought a tear to my eye, really.
The thing that we saw in Nepal, though, was, again, sort of the difficulty in duplicating that success. I get, yes, flanking was an issue, but look at how our support then suddenly changes, where it seems to be out of sync with the tank lineup that we have. We also see when things start to go awry, someone like KSA almost, I wouldn't say freelance, but try to, almost do a little bit more than he should. Dalton starts to do that where it's okay, I gotta, it's the individual trying to pick someone up and put them on their shoulders. Now, there's nothing wrong with that. You saw Kariv do this. On his Zen at one point, he could have been DPS, support, and heck, main tank while he was at it. There wasn't anything the Vancouver Titans could do to get near him. And yet he was able to go and dish out the damage. The Titans just didn't have an answer to that. And yet when they continued to sort of throw themselves at that wall, they finally accepted, we got to make changes. But the changes were weird. At one point, I think Shred went on Wrecking Ball.
Yeah.
And essentially fed. I mean, I could see what he was trying to do. He was trying to get in dive and disrupt. But he got stalled. And once he gets
he
stalled,
wanted to literally drop the ball on that map. That was the only map that I was really disappointed because up to that point I believe that we had all the momentum and we played a little bit better when you average out the maps, but this one in particular was very rough. We played really badly.
So
unfortunate.
the Toronto Defiant won Nepal 2-1, but arguably, if we were to go and look, yes, the Vancouver Titans lost 3-2, but we were provided one of the most entertaining matches that we as Vancouver Titans fans have actually seen this season. And I think that says a lot, because yes, the Vancouver Titans did get 2 wins with that old roster. But those 2 wins they weren't really entertaining. They were more worrisome because our expectations were so high. Yeah. Whereas this was the reverse. Our expectations were so low, and we started to see... No, but I mean, in fairness, we started to see that light that we sort of talked about. We think about it, like when the Vancouver Titans faced the Washington Justice, there was sort of this light. You could see the potential, and then it was the Florida Mayhem. Then it was the Gladiators. Then it was the Fusion. And if we actually consider the way the tournament worked out, 3 very good teams that we probably didn't show enough respect to. So I actually feel, having seen what they were able to accomplish against the Defiant, having the opportunity with a few weeks now of practice time, scrim time, development time to build upon it. Like, there is the beginnings of a foundation to see it through the 2020 season.
Yeah. There is some flexibility in the roster now, to be sure. Yeah.
And, much respect to the Toronto Defiant as well. They won the Battle of Canada. I mean, right now there have been 2 matches over the 2 seasons they've been in the league, and it is a tie 1-1. So the next time the 2 were to meet up, I presume that will be the rubber match, winner take all, the poutine.
We gonna do aggregate though?
Maybe.
Got to make ourselves feel good somehow, right? But I think one thing I'll say about the Defiant is Zick was decent. Mm-hmm. And I think as Zick looked decent, the talk came out. It's like, oh, why didn't the Titans get this guy? And I think that's what we're going to get a lot of the rest of the season, is every time someone from tier 2, every time someone comes unsigned as a rookie comes up, is we're going to hear, oh, why didn't the Titans sign this guy? They need blank, right? We need a lot of everything, right?
But I don't think anyone will complain about Shredlock after his match. He was nuts.
Yeah. No, he well, outside of the bookends,
Shockwave or Shredlock?
Oh, Shockwave. Sorry.
No, yeah. Shredlock looked quite well.
It's the photoshops they
3 in the middle. Zick's on a 2-week contract, so maybe there's an opportunity. Any final words about the match here before we take ourselves a quick break?
I want a rematch like right now.
Yeah. Well, let's see if we can arrange it. I mean, it's only 8 p.m. Pacific. I'm sure the Defiant are up, and we know the Titans are because they're streaming right now. But for those of you watching the stream, we are going to take ourselves into the fray. For those listening to the podcast, we're actually going to introduce you to Adamu, the co-founder and chief strategy officer of Overactive Media, and he is going to tell us a lot about his world, the Toronto Defiant, and provide you some context that, quite frankly, many of us here in Vancouver have just been thirsting for. So you don't want to miss this.
Back into the fray.
So here we are in the fray, and again, thank you, Adam, for joining us, sharing with us all of that insight, that fabulous information. There was so much that we learned that we actually ran out of time. And I think we'll have to get Adam on again in a future podcast, because he was open, he was honest, he was forthcoming with information. He also brought a little heat, which was fine. I mean, Sam is here to try to defend the honor of the West Coast, and he is still doing it here on the stream with West Coast, Best Coast. If only he wasn't muted right now and he could actually, say something to us.
It's hard. I'm losing my voice literally.
But
I mean, it's fine. Like, when you get so few wins, you gotta count them when they.
I've always said if we're gonna deal trash talk when we're winning, we gotta take it when we're losing. So it is what it is.
Yeah.
Exactly.
The at some point in time, though, we're going to see Sam rocking Toronto Defiant threads. Mark my words.
I don't know about that one. We basically just spent an hour talking Defiant, right? So does that mean like I already lost the bet that even though we haven't lost the bet? I think we might need to change it up.
Yeah, and for those trying to remember, what's this bet? Remember, Sam and I have a bet. If Overwatch 2 comes out in 2020, he has to talk about the Toronto Defiant for an episode. And if it does not come out in 2020, you are going to have to listen to basketball nonstop. So again, anyone here from Activision Blizzard listening, trust me, you want to ensure Overwatch 2 comes out this year. Let's talk a little bit, however, about the week that was. So the tournament kicked off in fine fashion. Now, the Friday matches were all in North America. And so you had the qualification match between the Defiant and the Titans. So the Defiant were to get through. You then had the next sort of four, top tier of the worst teams. I don't know how to describe that any differently. Teams 5, 6, 7, and 8 getting to choose their opponents. Paris Eternal, who got to choose first, did not choose the Defiant. They actually chose the Boston Uprising. The Atlanta Reign chose the Toronto Defiant. The LA Gladiators chose the Washington Justice. And we got the Battle of Texas when Dallas faced off against Houston. There was no choice to be had there. That is simply how it worked out.
It's destiny.
Now, Paris, I think, was trying to play the long game, thinking we don't want to play against a Toronto Defiant team that might match up better against us than the Boston Uprising, and they proceeded to get taken to 5. They only won 3-2. Like that, watching a little bit of that, and again, I was trying to earn tokens, so I wasn't paying a lot of attention. I must admit, there were probably some very worried Eternal fans watching that match. But Paris got through. The Atlanta Reign made quick time against the Toronto Defiant. In fact, on Anubis at one point, the Atlanta Reign suddenly won. Now, I don't know if it was a stream issue where we just, saw some time shifting take place, but the Reign weren't capping the point in OT. They were simply doing a lot of tactical crouching outside of the zone, allowing the Defiant to actually get into another fight.
Time and space just collapsed into itself.
Yeah.
Big thing about that game is if our friends over at CA Overwatch, they did an interview with Adam as well, and they talked a lot about how the Defiant actually lose to Atlanta in scrims a lot. So this, even though it doesn't look like a rivalry from our perspective, just two East Coast teams doing whatever, like they were quite upset about that. Okay. So
yeah, I mean, I tweeted out from RSP that that matchup was brought to you by the letters B and M. The LA Gladiators quite handily beat the Washington Justice 3-0, and the Dallas Fuel handily beat the Houston Outlaws 3-1. So that gets us into the weekend. So I'm actually going to jump over to the Asia bracket. So the Guangzhou Charge, finishing first in Asia, got themselves a quarterfinal bye. They went straight through into the semifinal. You had the Hangzhou Spark taking on the Seoul Dynasty, the New York Excelsior taking on the Chengdu Hunters, and the Shanghai Dragons taking on the London Spitfire. This wasn't a choice. This was simply best seed available. The Seoul Dynasty, quote-unquote, upset, and I'm using air quotes for those listening to the podcast, the Hangzhou Spark 3-0. But one of the things about the Dynasty is that I don't think their record quite clearly showed how good they were. And if you recall, in that last episode, there were some people giving them some serious love. And I'm actually going to go and give another shout out to the guys at CA Overwatch, because that was the team that they thought could potentially throw that bracket askew.
Yep.
The New York Excelsior got past the Chengdu Hunters 3-2 in what was probably a closer matchup than anyone would have imagined, considering how surgical New York happens to be. And the London Spitfire gave the Shanghai Dragons a serious run for their money, with the Dragons coming out on top 3-2.
Right.
So we then jump over into Saturday for North America. So the San Francisco Shock got to take on the Dallas Fuel. They had no trouble here, winning 3-1. The LA Valiant beat the Paris Eternal 3-2. I'm not going to suggest this was an upset. The LA Valiant were a good team and had a better record than the Paris Eternal. But Paris, I think, matched up against the Valiant better, and the Valiant were able to go and make magic happen. The Philadelphia Fusion beat the LA Gladiators 3-1, and the Florida Mayhem, a surprising team in the East that probably doesn't get the respect they deserve, beat the Atlanta Reign 3-1. Semifinals in the North American bracket. San Francisco Shock took LA Valiant down to SpongeBob's house, and they now own SpongeBob, so they beat the Valiant 3-0. And the Florida Mayhem beat the Philadelphia Fusion 3-1. Now, Florida had actually the second best record, so we have to give them props. But this was an entertaining match, and it was crazy. Like, we saw Soldier versus Soldier. When was the last time we actually saw Soldier come in to fight? Normally it's Soldier because, okay, this maybe needs to do this.
Or hero pools, yeah.
Last time is when we watched Call of Duty. That's the only time we see Soldier.
They saw Tsuno and the Soldier when they played against them, and they thought, well, that might work.
That's the wrong game.
We taught them everything we know.
And so that set up a final between the San Francisco Shock and the Florida Mayhem. But I'm going to jump back over to Asia here. So our semifinals in Asia had the Seoul Dynasty taking on the Guangzhou Charge. That was a nice fight. Seoul came out 3-2. And again, Seoul technically is the lower seed, but arguably a much better team than their seed indicated. That said, Guangzhou was the number 1 seed, so you have to give them credit. They were by far the team expected to win, and they did not. You then had the Shanghai Dragons taking on the New York Excelsior, and the New York Excelsior could provide no answer to the Dragons, setting up a final between the Dynasty and the Dragons. Now, I'm going to stay in Asia, because this is the first final that kicked off. If you happen to stay up to watch this, or got up early to watch it, you saw one of the craziest matches I think you will ever see, whether it be a stage final, tournament final, grand final, final. The Seoul Dynasty were up 3-0. How many people were watching that and decided to, one, go to bed, turn it off, do something else, or simply go on with their life, and missed out on the Shanghai Dragons winning not 1, not 2, not 3, but 4 maps in a row.
Easy there, LeBron James.
LeBron James vibes there.
Omni and I were both waiting to say that.
But we hear about reverse sweeps when it's like best of 3, like first to 3. This is unfreaking believable.
Well,
Go ahead.
Like we or I talked about the Seoul Dynasty being my pick last week, because I mean, like, Dragons were the easy pick, and I think Omni mentioned NYXL, and I said Seoul, and like those were the 3 teams that we were looking at, and Seoul is frustratingly good, and I mean that to say, like, if you were a Seoul Dynasty supporter, and I'm looking at a couple of in chat, like, you're up 3-0 on what everybody believes is one of the best, if not top 2 teams in the league, and you're laughing, right? And the weirdest thing is, and it's not that weird, because there's a very good reason why, is the best comparison I can make is to the London Spitfire season 1, right? Like, nobody really expected them to take the championship. Like, that was like New York's, walk in the park year, right? Like, they should have cleaned up beginning to end. And London came in and took their lunch money. But it's the same characters, right? You got their coach, you got Prophet, you got Gesture, you got Bedosin. Actually, I don't know if Bedosin was in season 1, but I can't remember now. It's a while back. But it's just, when they're on, and when they're off, they can lose. I don't even remember the worst team they lost to this year, but they've had some duds.
Yeah, it's really unfortunate. And then, like Snorlax Gaming says in the chat, it's like, imagine losing 4 maps that you chose yourself as well. It makes it even crazier. An amazing game to watch, really. I think people were complaining so much about hero pools, but guess what? I think just by going through, the ups and downs of hero pools and coming to this map where everything goes, you saw so much variety in the heroes picked all the time. You got the Tor picks, you got the Sim, you got the Ashe, it was a nuts testament to how great Overwatch can really be. And every time we bury it again and again, it pulls its hand out of the grave again to say, like, wow, this is how it looks like when it's done properly. And both teams played really, really well, especially with the huge talent that you saw on both occasions. Lots of clutch plays that, like, for example, Fleta 4K on Kings Row was insane on the Widow, or Prophet just going nuts on the Tracer every time and time again.
Yeah.
And our boy Slime didn't even play.
Well, no, and that's what I was going to mention. Slime in this fight did not get in. I want to actually sort of call back to something that Adam had shared about the way the game could be and how much fun it can be. What we saw with this tournament, without the implementation of hero pools as they exist, I think introduced fun. There were a lot more exciting matches. Like, from a viewing perspective, there were a couple of duds, but that was more, I think, matchup between teams. But I would say there were many more times where you got to see someone pop off.
Yeah.
And we didn't see, the potential of, a Somber Goats type matchup. Like, we saw a double shield, sure, but I think hero pools, as they've been put into place, were an experiment to try to solve a problem that the Overwatch League didn't know how to address. This tournament showed that the solution that they've put into place is not the best one. Now, does that mean hero pools are going to go? No, but I hope they take the data that they saw.
I just want to play devil's advocate here really quick. I think that if we didn't have hero pools, we would have never in a million years got the coaches and players brave enough, because I think we had another mental issue with what metas are perceived to be and how stagnant people just in their mindset of trying out new things. And I think this kind of opened the door for that.
Sure. And I was going to note, like, I don't necessarily think hero pools are going to go away. And you're right. They probably were maybe the precipice to what we've now seen.
Yeah.
But I think the evolution needs to take place. The hero pools, if they do exist moving forward, exist in such a way that you can actually coach and build around them.
Right.
I mean, as the resident anti-hero pool guy on this podcast, like my biggest frustration is just it stresses the players out, it stresses the coaches out, it stresses the people who make the graphics out, it stresses Zoe's cat out. But here's my suggestion: if hero pools must stay, here's my hero pool suggestion: instead of bans, Tracer, Widow, Genji. Somebody has to play one every map, and I guarantee you will watch. That's it.
Okay, so it's almost like a reverse pool. It's like the guaranteed pick.
I don't know.
Okay, no, I mean, in my mind, I mean, this is the opportunity to experiment right now. Like, we're seeing the evolution of the schedule. We know that June will introduce another form of regional tournament. So I think, if the Overwatch League wants to sort of start looking future forward, maybe something like that could take place. Just, using the tournament or introducing almost, I don't want to say arcade rules, but having almost an experimental card within the league. But again, we don't know what the sort of long-term structure is for the remainder of the season. Now, back to the actual tournament itself. The North American final between the San Francisco Shock and the Florida Mayhem. The score was 4-2 for the Shock, but this wasn't a 4-2 that was handily the San Francisco Shock. It was a back and forth battle. In fact, we had set up an interview with Adam thinking that 6 p.m. Pacific was actually a safe time. And I'm messaging him saying, hey, looks like we're going to go a little bit longer. How do you want to approach this? And he was soaked. He's like, oh, yeah, no, let's wait until this is over. And then he follows up with another message. I hope it goes 7. And, you can, having heard the interview, you can hear the passion in his voice about the Overwatch League and the game and that. But we were seeing some phenomenal Overwatch. Maybe not Vancouver Titans San Francisco Shock level. No bias, obviously. But
Goats is back.
But my goodness, it was like you could tell these two teams were giving her. And Florida, I mean, they are a top tier team in a world without hero pools. I don't know if hero pools knock them down. I don't know if they have the flexibility within their roster in a world of hero pools, but you take them out, they were able to go and play to their strengths. It was some good fun.
Yeah.
Saya player was the problem, apparently.
I mean, you can't argue it.
Yeah, you can.
But like the Mayhem were definitely like not as deep as the Shock. And one of the things I tweeted out during the map is like at one point we saw, I think it was Violet going off on BAP, and Moth was playing the Zen, being the good team player Moth is, and Moth's fine, but Moth isn't Twilight. And if you imagine Twilight on the Zen at that point, without the ping, since he's still hanging out in Korea, which is why I presume that he hasn't integrated into the team yet. Like that is a scary, scary team. Even with Sinatra gone, even with Architect gone, like these guys are so good. And that's with me giving full props to the Mayhem. Like, Omni and I have been joking all season about how they're the Florida Mayhem. I apologize. You're making me eat my words publicly. Here is my public apology.
Do you think the Shock are better than Shanghai and Seoul?
Mm,
Yes.
really? Okay, I don't think. Okay, I don't think so. I think Hero Pools. I actually would then give it to the Shock. And that's where take Hero Pools out of the equation. Maybe not so much.
But at the championship, the Hero Pools will be out of the equation, right?
Yeah. Okay. The San Francisco Shock won, and I'm for those Titans fans tuning in, you're like, oh, did Twilight make it in? No, not at all. But that didn't stop Twilight from tweeting that he was clutch from the bench. Hard carry.
Yeah,
that was fun. You know what? I like seeing someone like Twilight happy. I mean, I want to see obviously all the former Vancouver Titans players happy, but we had the opportunity to interview these players and sort of get to know them a little bit. And Twilight, you could tell. I mean, he wanted to win. He wanted to work hard. He wanted to play hard. Like, he was all about business. He's also all about Balenciaga. But the point being, good on him. And it does sound like he will be making his way over to the United States. So, what does that mean for the Overwatch League right now? Not a whole lot. They are taking a break. They'll be back with the June 30 kicking off the weekend of June 13-14. All we know is there is a June tournament. It's a regional tournament, so I'm going to presume it's very similar to the one we just saw in May. I'm not entirely sure how much different it'll be, or if it'll be sort of just, a different schedule to play into seeding. We'll obviously learn that as we go, and you can rest assured us at Ready Set Pwn are going to be providing that to you, whether it be here on a podcast or, as it seems to happen, all the greatest and awesome news break on Wednesday after the episode is recorded. So we'll make sure we share it on social. Now, if you're tuning into the actual live stream, you're apparently hacked into my computer and seeing our rundown. But at this point, we were going to talk a little bit about some of the moves that took place in the Overwatch League in the last week, and there were some. Now, let's get the one out of the way that sort of came up in chat. Janu was on a 2-week contract. He has now since been signed long-term. And that signature was not made by their previous general manager. That's right. The Washington Justice dropped Ballin and Banny. Banny being the assistant coach, Ballin being their general manager, in what has to be one of the most poorly worded statements that I can ever remember reading. Like, it was, and I'm paraphrasing here, and that might come across as harsh, but the Justice essentially phrased the statement as in, to become a better team, we wish these two people good luck in the remainder of their careers because they're not with us. Like, that's weird. Like, I don't know how to look at it any other way.
Straight up unprofessional.
Like, even if there's, like, something going on, I mean, people go and they rag on, let's say, the Vancouver Titans. But the Vancouver Titans, they acknowledge, yeah, we've made a shift. We wish these, people well, and they move on. Like that, it's, sure, maybe you could say the sanitized approach, but there's a reason why you go about that. Now, if you might say, oh, well, let's add some color, that ain't it, Chief. Like, that was nuts.
No color here.
Yeah. So the Washington Justice have promoted Prey to GM, and he's the one who signed Janu to the long-term contract. Now, the signing of that contract also came with some language that Janu might be coming to the United States himself after this tournament, and then be ready in June. Now, I am not a lawyer. I did stay on a Holiday Inn Express once, which apparently deigns to you knowledge according to their ads. But I'm a little bit curious how U.S. visas work, because my understanding was that essentially the work visa, or the visa that's required, would not survive the termination of the previous contract, and therefore a new application would need to be made. And right now, with the pandemic as it is, trying to get your visa interview would be tough. And I know people will say, well, when there's a lot of money, you can go and get these expedited visas and interviews and all that. Yeah, sure, but even in the current state of the world, that doesn't seem to be happening. So if you happen to have a good handle on the law in the United States, but also happen to know the world of esports, let us know. I'm just genuinely curious how that all works.
Maybe they thought he was playing for the Washington Capitals or something.
Well, the United States has actually lifted the quarantine rules for professional athletes. I don't know if that includes esports, but it's a lot easier to get into the US.
Because athletes do push-ups so they don't get COVID.
Yeah, something like that. The other thing that we'd already talked about was the Toronto Defiant did also pick up a player, just like the Vancouver Titans did, but Zick was on a 14-day contract. Whether or not that remains to be the case, and whether we'll see him come June, we don't know, but that is the latest. What else is going on in the world of Overwatch right now? Well, the anniversary event is still live. Myself, Omni, and Sam had some fun in Mystery Heroes yesterday.
True.
Omni was going all, Widow on Torb.
Was it 34 kill streak or something?
Yeah, something like that. Well, Torb is my boy.
Yeah.
I've been playing him before it was a legit good pick too.
The Mystery Heroes, the great definer of true skill, because you get what you get. Last night when I was actually playing, I got 3 Mystery Hero matches that essentially was the same group of people. No one was leaving, which is very rare, I find. And someone actually commented after the 3rd in a row where I got the play of the game, do you ever get tired, Light Force, of getting the play of the game? And I'm like, no, team effort, blah, blah, blah. And so map number 4 comes out. I don't get the POTG. Why? Because as Anna, when I went and amped up Soldier and he went and got himself a 5K, he got the play of the game. And people are like, holy hell, I'm leaving. This Light Force guy is obviously a smurf. This is Mystery Heroes.
Was that the game we got called Plats?
Oh, yeah, that's right. That's the other thing, yeah.
You know what, though? We played really, really well. And just to mention the fact that Stitch wasn't able to carry you guys to a victory, but I was. And guess what? Neither he or me are in Overwatch League right now, so... Coincidence? I think not.
Well, okay. Stitch technically still is under contract-ish, I think.
Isn't still
for another 4 days or something.
Okay.
Like that, yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So he has that over me. Damn it.
And then again, if you are watching the live stream, you must, Atomic Skull have hacked into my computer, because the next thing I wanted to talk about was that it broke today. BlizzCon has been officially canceled for 2020. Now, to summarize the statement, and I think this is not a surprise to really anyone, Activision Blizzard couldn't come up with a scenario that would allow for a convention like BlizzCon to take place in a manner that would do it justice. So the prudent decision was it was being canceled. And again, we've seen so many cancellations, and I think 2020 as a year for people to get together is likely a wash. There is the possibility we might see an online event. I can't imagine, Activision Blizzard, or Blizzard specifically, in that relationship goes an entire year without some form of announcement. And we are seeing a lot of different developers provide sort of the online experience. We know that there is a strong chance to see 2 new consoles launch, both Microsoft and Sony working on the Xbox X, was it? I don't know what their next generation is, and then the
One S or something like that.
Xbox One, Xbox X, or whatever, and then you have the PlayStation 5. So we're seeing even them start talking a little bit about the hardware and the process online. So I could see that happening, and from there we get to learn more about the possibility of an Overwatch 2, which I hope beyond hope is released in 2020.
If it was 2020, it would have been released at BlizzCon, so...
At least it's not that Xbox that you make a 360 turn and you walk away. I just hope they bring out like a direct or something, like a Blizzard Direct.
Well, like Nintendo does, right? Like that's
Yeah.
Nintendo does our directs. It's all online. Like even during
Even
like
Sony
E3 and that they do a
Yeah.
direct.
BlizzCon 2020 is when they announce Overwatch for Stadia.
Okay, I have a Stadia. Just to I mean, if you listen to the podcast long enough, you know I have an addiction. I have a Stadia. I have a PlayStation 4, PlayStation 4 Pro. I have an Xbox One. I have a Nintendo Switch. I have obviously my PC here. If I go down sort of other generations, PS3, PS2, PS1, Xbox 360. I don't have the Xbox originally anymore. I have a PSP. I have a PS Vita.
Why do you have two PlayStations?
So the original PlayStation 4 that I had started to struggle with obviously some of the newer titles. And this is actually more work-related thing. My benefits plan provided a wellness benefit that I could use, legitimately use to purchase a PlayStation 4 Pro. And that's what I did because that helps me reduce stress. It's good for my health.
I should negotiate for that shit.
What's the timestamp on that?
Yeah, no kidding. This is going to be tough to slice and dice, but
you see all the frustration from our losses and the team going away, and you gotta believe me because of that, just from sheer jealousy.
Oh man. Oh, my goodness. But yeah, no, I mean it doesn't get me anything. I actually have. Speaking of Overwatch, I have it on the PlayStation as well as on PC. I have not played it on PlayStation for a long time. In fact,
me either.
The only person that I would have played on PlayStation with was probably Sam, but now he's on the world of PC too. So there might be others, but ultimately, it's just hard to get TV time in the pandemic. The wife and baby force they.
So what you're saying is you have 18 consoles and no TVs to put it on.
No, exactly. Like my wife and I were talking about. Originally our plan was to move this year. It's not happening because we need a bigger place. I mean, we have a 1-bedroom and a den, so my daughter needs a bedroom. And one of the places we were looking at had like a den, and we're sort of talking about how I would turn it into like an office game room and all that. And she's like, "Oh, you put a TV down there?" I'm like, "No, man, I'd get enough monitors that I could have everything hooked up." And then she looked at me real weird.
You have enough consoles to make a bed for your daughter.
I don't want her sleeping on those things.
You could just have like a console bed. The PS4 hump could be the pillow.
This is why people turn into
a lot of sharp edges on those.
The top-notch content that you get from Team RSP. But that is our episode. Again, for those of you who are tuning into the live stream, we kicked it off talking a little bit about the payload, and then we went into an interview with Adam for those listening to the podcast, which if you were in the live stream, you're going to have to download tomorrow to hear that phenomenal interview. And then here on the fray, we talked a little about the week that was and the week that will be, which isn't. So you might be thinking, wait, wasn't there supposed to be big news? There is. Over the past year and a half, us at Ready, Set, Pwn have strived to build a community. We have looked to move this force of nature family forward. And we finally decided the only way to do that is to get bigger. So we're going to have some special guests joining us over the next few episodes to talk a little bit about what bigger means to us, Team RSP, to you, our valued listeners, our valued viewers, our valued community, and quite frankly, the things that we have sort of lined up to happen over the course of the next few weeks, the next few months, and into 2021 are top tier stuff. So I know, big tease, big bait, but you don't want to miss any episodes moving forward, because trust me, you miss it, it'll be old news, and you'll be playing catch up the entire time.
Not watching Overwatch next week anyway.
That's true. You might as well watch us. Tune in, listen. But yeah, I mean, there's people here who are talking about what might be happening, and I mean, there's PogChamps galore going on in chat. But a few things I do want to mention. One of the ways that you can keep in touch with us at RSP is by being part of our own community and joining our Discord. The easiest way to get into Discord is discord.io/readysetpwn. Being part of that conversation gets you to stay on top of all of the latest, greatest news. And we do have an inner sanctum for those supporters that have chosen to show us a little love on Patreon. And that's patreon.com/readysetpwn. Our patron chat gets access to juice that even
the juice
doesn't make it to public consumption. Like we reward those who reward us. Just want to say it. The other thing,
Omni Unfiltered.
Yeah. The other thing is that if you want to show us some love, we are affiliated on Twitch. So if you go to twitch.tv/readysetpwn and give us a follow, we greatly appreciate it. But you can also drop subs. You can drop bits. If you drop a sub on Twitch, you get access to our currently one emote, the Wednesday emote, which for those listening to the podcast, tuning in, know all the lore behind Wednesday. And we are looking at doing some pretty cool things moving forward in that realm as well. But before we wrap up this episode, there's probably some questions about this update to our logo on Discord and our logo on Twitter that you might have seen. We made that change because we wanted to show respect to not only Adam, who joined us as a guest, but also to the Toronto Defiant, who did beat the Vancouver Titans in the Battle of Canada. But rest assured, we will remain your premier source for everything to do with the Vancouver Titans from here onward. But we make no guarantees that we won't become even more than that. We want to be your premier source for everything that you ever need to know about the Overwatch League. So stay tuned. RSP has some big ideas, and we want you to be along for the ride. So before we call this episode a done deal, any final words of wisdom, gentlemen, to our viewers as well as our listeners?
Yeah, I'm not gonna be a big tease like Lifeforce here. I'm just gonna tell it how it is. Starting from next week and going forward, we're gonna be your premier source.
Bro, we're live.
Same time. That's pretty much it.
Dude, you can drop all that.
That's I am like, do I in post production?
If he breaks his NDA, I get to break my NDA, right?
Like, how do I fix this in post production? Like, I can go and adjust the podcast episode, but I can't fix the stream. Like, dude, man, Alex,
Just dropping some truth bombs there.
I'm worried to even let Sam have an opportunity to talk here now.
I don't have anything to say other than I think if you want to work or play for the Vancouver Titans, Omni, here's all you got to do. Here's a pro tip. Just change your gamer tag to a Transformer name and you're gold.
Oh, definitely will do.
Megatron, here you come.
As for me, thank you for those of you who tuned into our live stream. We'll be back again next week with all the latest and greatest, the Vancouver Titans, the Overwatch League. We are looking, as I said, to get some special guests lined up, and we may be able to get them either on a live stream, but guaranteed you will see them join us in upcoming podcast episodes. You will not want to miss them. If you've reached the end of this episode and you want to continue to get more, make sure you smack that follow button in whatever podcast app you happen to use. And as is our practice, if you like what you saw, let us know. All reviews that you leave, whether it be in Apple Podcasts or whatever podcast application, or even better on podchaser.com/readysetpwn, those reviews get read verbatim. I will read them word for word. You want me to say things that you know I would otherwise never say, and some people have in the past? Leaving a review is the best way to go about doing that. Now, you don't like the podcast? Let us know as well. We're always looking to improve. One of the things that we might need to do is also cut a co-host who can't keep his mouth shut because he just broke an NDA, and my goodness, post-production is going to be tough.
I thought it was going to be me for sure.
Yeah, I hope we don't have that many good lip readers in the chat.
And then as well, if you ever want to hear yourself as part of an upcoming episode, you've got a question for us or just some special thoughts you'd like to share, there are two ways to go about getting that to us. One is by actually leaving us a voicemail. Our number is 604-409-3324. That's 604-409-3324. You can leave a voicemail or you can send us a text message. And if you'd rather just use your computer to make that magic happen, go to voicelink.fm/readysetpwn. That's voicelink.fm/readysetpwn. So on behalf of Sam at Another Sam Chan, Ani at Ani Strength, myself, Chris at Lightforce, I'm going to sign off this episode with those magical two words, catchphrase.